Hello there, virtual space heroes. Welcome to our first live stream 2021. And I hope all of you had a wonderful holiday time, that you had time to recharge your batteries, and that you had a great start into this year. I'm super happy because we also have a fantastic guest lineup for this Virtual Space Hero LinkedIn Live show for 2021. Already until April, you find all my guests on the webpage. So if you wonder where it is, you just go to virtualspacehero.com. If you go to virtualspacehero.com, you have a tab that's called Live Shows and Virtual Events. And if you click on 2021, you can see the lineup. And it's going to be amazing. We have guests from across the globe. And as you know, we're talking about virtual work, virtual teams, virtual learning, and virtual meetings. So don't miss that. Have a look, schedule the LinkedIn Lives if you're interested into your calendar. And also, if you have a topic or a speaker that you think should be featured on this show, don't hesitate and go to the webpage, because there is also a Google form where you can introduce and feature or introduce a speaker so that we get in touch with him or with her. Having said that, you have seen last year we have been featuring numerous guests, virtual experts from across the globe. We were talking a lot about virtual facilitation, virtual learning, how to design virtual learning journeys, but also about remote work. So that's the focus of the Virtual Space Hero LinkedIn Live show. We are also today streaming to 3 different channels. So we are on our main platform here on LinkedIn. We are streaming to Facebook and YouTube. And with this, welcome to all of you out there. I'm super excited because today we are going to pick up on a topic that we have been discussing last year from another angle, because we're talking about virtual facilitators today. So last year it was all about virtual facilitation and how to design, how to facilitate, etc. But today we're going to talk about how to select a virtual facilitator for your learning and development program. And I'm super excited to have a fantastic expert here with me on the show. Somebody I had already the pleasure to be with in a training, to participate in one of his trainings. And with that, I'm already opening here our Virtual Space Hero LinkedIn Live doors to Robert Kienzle, connecting from Hong Kong. Here he is.
Hello, Barbara. Thank you for having me.
Hi there, Rob. Hi there, Rob. And if anybody of you is asking yourself, why is she having him connect at 2 o'clock in the morning from Hong Kong? I asked Robert if that is really okay with him, and he told me that he currently is a night owl. Oh, it is, right?
Yes, absolutely. I do a lot of research, reading, and just the back end work that we do to do live facilitation. Most of that's done in my world at night, at least in my personal schedule. So I am very happy to be here, and being up this late is no problem at all.
Thank you so much again, Rob, for joining us. And as I mentioned to all of you out there, and I see already Jordan is already connected. So Jordan, welcome to our show, and thanks for connecting super early. To all the rest of you out there who connected already, let us know where you're connecting from. And please also use the function to provide us with your questions, with your comments, so that we can integrate them into our discussion. You know, today's topic is how to select a virtual facilitator for your learning and development program. And Rob, a little bit about your background. You know that I have been following you the past year extensively with Knowmium and also Joshua Davis, your colleague. And I'm always super intrigued by the content that you're posting, whether it's an article on LinkedIn or whether it's a video, which are really awesome. They helped me a lot to also get better in Miro, for example. And I had the pleasure, as I mentioned, to participate, or that you were doing for us a Miro session for one of the NGOs that I'm working with. So that was really amazing. But Rob, this is the background that I know from you. I also know that you are sort of a celebrity in the keynote speaker area, having won some awards, correct? You never told me, but somebody else told me, you know?
I competed against 100 semifinalists for the World Championship of Public Speaking in 2014 and then again in 2015. I did not make it to the final 10, but I was very happy to be one of the final 100 in the world 2 years in a row. And this year, I'm in the running again. I'm not to the final 100 yet. We'll see if that happens.
Amazing. I was really very impressed when I saw that now. So I digged a little bit deeper into your competition background. But let me ask you one question. So you do a lot of virtual facilitation. How did you sort of make that switch from in presence? When did that happen for you? And what is your what is your virtual facilitation background?
Well, I think there's two areas where I had experience before 2020. The first was doing blended learning. I used to work in universities. I used to do university classes, and I'd also do corporate training, often at the same time, juggling almost two different careers. And in a lot of my programs, whether it was through university or it was through corporate training, I had offline activities that participants could do. Sometimes it was before the live session, sometimes it was afterwards, and sometimes it was just continual learning content where they could access that. So I was creating that, finding that, putting that together. So a bit of blended learning. Over the last few years, doing purely corporate training, I had been doing some virtual only programs where we had people in offices around the globe. They were working together in teams, but they really didn't get to meet. Maybe they meet once a year at some kind of gathering. So they were in a lot of training sessions together because they were doing virtual work on their own. And I would come in and do these virtual sessions with them. So even though 2020 was a hard year on a lot of people, I felt not only a bit experienced, but a little bit blessed to have those experiences in the past, knowing what has worked and what hasn't worked, not only for me, but also for my clients. And when 2020 hit, it was just about taking that to the next level. We're going to be doing more virtual training. We're going to have to develop more programs virtually. We're going to have to take live programs we do face to face and turn those into a virtual format. And we're going to need to convert activities. We're going to need to find, new virtual tools. You already mentioned Miro. And it was just about making what we do as successful as the live programs that we're usually used to.
Mm-hmm. And I think to all of you out there, if you want to follow somebody on LinkedIn with amazing videos or tutorials on Miro and also comments, articles about that, definitely connect with Rob today. You find him also in the event description, or you're just looking up on LinkedIn. And also Knowmium, as the company that he's associated with, has a lot of resources online that also helped me a lot to further develop my virtual skills. But let me pick up on something that you were saying. So you were also, of course, this year, and I think this was also the conclusion when I had one conversation with Joshua, even though we were already working in the virtual context, virtual learning environment, but still none of us had such a crazy learning curve as we did have this year, right? Because it was like really a total push also for those who were already working in the virtual space. You said using Miro, and you also were able to develop your skills further. I call this LinkedIn Live today with the question about how to select a virtual facilitator, because a few weeks ago, or a month ago, maybe a 1.5 months ago, I saw a fantastic post of yours where you were comparing how to select a virtual facilitator with a restaurant search, right?
Yeah, so if you're looking for the right restaurant, especially if you want to host a large party or a large gathering, there's a lot of comparisons to be made there.
Exactly. So let's start with that, because I think your article or in your comment, you started with the question, where do I find the right facilitator? So where do you start the right virtual facilitator? How do you go for that restaurant search? What would be there an option?
Well, before I answer that, I do want to give a disclaimer. A lot of the ideas for finding a virtual facilitator will apply to finding a live face-to-face facilitator. So we're focusing on virtual today, I know, but a lot of this does apply to the face-to-face world. So back to the question, finding the right virtual facilitator and finding the right restaurant. We know in the world of networking that personal recommendations go a very long way. About 80% of jobs in the professional world are acquired through some kind of networking, whether it's just a name drop in the office or whether it's somebody giving a very strong recommendation and referral. And the same thing works in the virtual facilitation world. Usually, if we haven't experienced that person's virtual workshop, somebody else we know has, and then they make that recommendation to us because they have that personal experience and testimony. So that's really the number one thing to do. Connect with your network, connect with the people who are in your field, and find out what has worked for them or their colleagues. And it's like, it is like a restaurant. If I've eaten at the restaurant, I know if it's good or not, but I'm going to go ask my friends, where have you eaten in this city, or where have you eaten in this neighborhood, and getting their restaurants. Now I can go online and look. You mentioned Knowmium. We have a website. We love people to go to our website to see what we have, and if they like to contact us, wonderful. But most people who find us through just a direct referral. Somebody's mentioned us directly. But I would say the other part of that is, even if someone refers you to a restaurant or a virtual facilitator, take a look at their menu. Take a look and see what they have on their website, if their visuals look appealing to you, if their content, if their menu looks appetizing to you, because something might work really, really well for one company, and that company's style might be different than yours. So there definitely is a little bit of personal research that goes into it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Let me ask you one question. When you said like the restaurant research that we were saying, like, okay, go to your network, see what they were doing. This also brings me to the point of LinkedIn as the business networking platform. And also, what is the role for you and your company, for example, when it comes to LinkedIn recommendations?
So do you mean the personal recommendations that you can write for an individual?
Or that you can see on an individual's page, for example?
I do some LinkedIn coaching and some resume and CV coaching and advising. And that's one of the big things that we see people not utilize on LinkedIn. Their profile set up at the top. It's a great description, a great profile picture. Their experience is detailed. They've got achievements, they've got awards, whatever they have. And then you get down to two sections at the bottom. There's the skills and endorsements, where it just has the skill and you can click, yes, I agree. And then you have the longer recommendations, which are typed out testimonies. That's usually what we see people not utilize. So my recommendation is get them. But in order to get them, go out and give them. If you've worked with somebody, whether it's at a company or even if you just had a one-day project like a virtual workshop, write someone a recommendation about your experience with them, probably if it's positive. And then ideally they will either write you one back, or you can just honestly say, hey, if you have time in the next couple of weeks, would you drop me one? Because they don't have to be that long. But we absolutely, we recommend it to make a full, complete profile. At the same time, you'll notice a lot of accomplished people on LinkedIn that don't have a lot of recommendations either. So it's not, it shouldn't be a deciding factor. But think about a restaurant website. If you have a lot of authentic reviews versus a restaurant that has two, one of them you might initially trust before doing your own investigation.
Mm-hmm. I think it's super point, and maybe I just add on top on that, because I use LinkedIn recommendations very actively. And I think one important point that I also always do when people give me a recommendation, I immediately ask them for the approval to also use it, for example, on my webpage, on customer offers, for other marketing purposes. So a friend of mine, she's a lawyer, she told me that you cannot just take it from LinkedIn and put it on your webpage, but it would be good also to have that agreement that you can use that, for example, on your webpage. And I also put it into clients' offers, for example.
Yeah, that's excellent. I know some people wouldn't even take that step. They would just say, hey, it's public on LinkedIn. I'm going to use it however I want. But absolutely keeping, agreements and just being transparent about it. Because honestly, if somebody's going to write you something for your public LinkedIn, they're not going to say no, probably. But they might ask you to change or alter something, or they might want to stay anonymous, uh, depending on how you might use it. So that just keeps everybody happy.
Mhm. Perfect. Perfect. You were saying then the second aspect, look at the menu. So what do the trainers offer? When you, for example, advise somebody on looking at someone's trainings offers that he or she has on the webpage or wherever, what would be criteria that you would be using to look at that?
So that one, I think there's two things here. Looking for yourself at their website to see what they offer is great, but we know people may not list everything that they do. Ideally, they should if their website's complete, but their website might have an overview and the real details are, in a brochure that's not on their website. At the same time, I've personally seen companies, I say the royal we at Knowmium, but I personally have seen websites that list programs and accomplishments that they don't do. It's nobody that we work with, but we have seen fabrications, and especially if there's a brand new company and they, oh yeah, we do these 25 programs, but do they really? They might be able to in the future, but it may not be something they do now. So always take that with, it's a restaurant. A restaurant's going to say, yes, we have the best pasta in the city. They're all going to say that, but do they really? Um, the other thing I think is more important though is having the conversation with the facilitator and asking them about the program, asking them, you know, what would this look like if it's virtual in a 1 or 2 hour session? If it's live in person, maybe it's a half day or a full day. But what does that look like? What do you cover? Could you give me an example of some of the activities? And they should be able to share that fairly quickly, whether it's a document or whether it's just a conversation that they can talk you through. Um, a really good facilitator is going to be able to tell you that the goals and the needs of your specific team either are or are not uh, compatible with that trainer. And if we personally have a client that says, here's what we need, let's say it's a customer service team, they're having a lot of problems with problem customers, they're getting angry, it's destroying morale in the office. We specialize in persuasive communication, we specialize in teamwork, but there will be some industries that we don't generally work in that we might be able to help. But after talking to them, we might recommend another training organization simply because we want to keep that trust. If we tell them your customer service problems are beyond our experience, let us hand you over to somebody else that we trust and see if they're a better fit. We know that that client is going to come back to us for their future needs simply because we were 100% honest of them getting their best return on investment.
And it's fantastic because you were already mentioning one question that I also got beforehand for this LinkedIn Live, and I also mentioned it in the article. So, what would be those points that you discuss in this get to know each other meeting or conversation with a potential facilitator, with a potential virtual facilitator, or with a potential client? So, from our perspectives, when you explore goals, challenges, and needs, what should be discussed in this initial conversation?
Well, if we go back to the idea of a restaurant, let's say that we were going to have a huge birthday party, we're going to have 50 people. We'd want to go into that restaurant and not only see the surroundings, but we'd also want to, talk with the chef, talk with the manager and see what's available, what's not. How can we move things around? What sections can we make private and making sure that not only is it doable, but are they somebody who are they enjoyable to work with, or at least efficient to work with. And so I think the same thing applies with with the virtual facilitator, talk with them. If you're finding a virtual facilitator, just be honest about what vision do you have for the program, and specifically what needs, what problems, what challenges, what goals do you have for the participants of that program. And if there's anything that has been a problem in the past that you're trying to correct, or if there's no problem and you're just trying to have a collaborative workshop just for team building, be 100% honest about that. Because one of the worst things I think from a facilitator's point of view that can happen is that we get information from a company of what they want. We go and we do the workshop, whether it's in person or whether it's virtual, and then later we hear it's not what the participants wanted, or there was someone in management who wasn't what they wanted, and we have to scratch our head and go, but we talked about this. You didn't tell us that that's what you want. So going back to the restaurant, if I tell the restaurant that I want chicken served for dinner, and then later I give a review on that restaurant's website and says, yeah, you know what, it was an okay dinner, but I really wish they would have served something other than chicken. Like, I didn't order that. And it doesn't happen, it depends. I think it does happen in the business world. And I think if there's any other facilitators listening to this or watching this, a lot of people might have that experience. Ideally, we get to know our long-term clients enough to work out what they actually do want, and for us, the facilitators, asking the right questions, making sure that they are covering their bases, because there are going to be people who hire a facilitator, especially virtually, that may not even think of giving certain types of information because they just have never done it. So that's my job as a facilitator, or the chef's job in a restaurant, to kind of have this checklist of asking these questions to make sure we are giving you everything that you've expected.
And I think it's fun. I just want to pick up on what Almendra is saying, because she was picking up on a previous argument of yours. Yes, as trainers, we need to know what we can offer and what we can't. So in case of the chicken example, if that person wants, I don't know, Chinese food, and we don't have it because we're a chicken specialized restaurant, we need to send them somewhere else. And recommending other qualified facilitators or restaurants shows true understanding of client needs. Absolutely.
And even to add to that, just thinking about all the possibilities to collaborate, not only could a chicken restaurant recommend another Chinese restaurant, but they could say, well, we're happy to bring in some people from that Chinese restaurant, and we can bring that dish in, and you could still have your party here. And that's something that I know that you've seen in the training world this year. So many collaborations. There's two companies, they do things a little bit differently, but they come together for this joint workshop, and it just showcases what they can both do. And it's really just sharing each other's network and sharing the expertise and the knowledge that both parties have to share.
And I think that's super important, because particularly 2020 showed us how important it is also to have a big network and a reliable network that you can really trust, bring in, work together, collaborate, pass on clients. And that's also why I think that the potential of LinkedIn or networking in virtual facilitation, or for virtual facilitators, to learn from each other and also to have that sharing is caring philosophy in mind is like super important.
Absolutely.
So we were talking about goals, needs, and challenges. What would be one question, or several questions, one of the questions that you'd be asking, or from an organizational perspective, or as a trainer, when we talk about the needs from the participants? Because you were saying that maybe I'm not the right trainer for these participants, but how can you make sure as a trainer that you ask that question, get that information to be able to evaluate that?
I think if we first take a look at workshop content, now, again, this could apply to virtual workshops or face-to-face, and we can talk about platforms and tech specifics in a bit if you want. But right now, if we take a look at content, it really comes down to the client is the client, and they have a team of people that want some kind of training or facilitation. So what are they going to need during that workshop, and what do they need to do with that information after the workshop. Because how I like to do, let's say it's a presentation program, I have my own style, but if that style doesn't work with a certain team, they're not going to have a great time in the training. They may not even be that engaged in it if it doesn't fit their company style or their team style. But also, they definitely probably wouldn't try to go and use what I've done with them later if they weren't engaged, if they weren't enjoying it. So that's one of the biggest things for either the client to say directly or the facilitator to ask directly is, what are the goals? What do you want as a result of this workshop? Because if I'll give an example here. A lot of people have come to me and said, we want a fun team building training. Now, I can come in there and I can bring activities, and whether it's virtual or face-to-face, we can have a great time. But I asked them, what do you want them to really get out of this? What do you want them to learn? What do you want them to be able to do? How might they apply this later? Now, if they tell us there's no learning goal at all, it's just a fun day, all right, well, then we've answered that question. But usually we can build in learning and skill building to just a fun team building workshop that really does have business and communication successes built in there, if that makes sense. And I think that's the big thing is people don't realize. They say, let's just have a workshop to have a workshop. Workshops fix things, but if we don't know what to fix, if you ever read that, I think it's from the 70s, the book, it's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It's what I don't know if you ever heard of this. It was a famous book back in the 70s, even, back, I think I read it in maybe like the 90s or something. But one of the key takeaways was, if you're a motorcycle owner, you know more about your bike than a mechanic. Even if you're not a mechanic, you have the feel of your bike. You know how it rides, you know how it turns, you know if something doesn't feel right. Now, you don't know what part is acting up, but you know the effect that it's having. So if you can communicate that with a mechanic, the mechanic is going to be able to find the problem and fix the problem much better than you just giving the bike and say, you figure it out. And that's really what finding a virtual facilitator is. It should be a collaboration. At least at first, it needs to be a collaboration to set those goals, to understand the team, to understand the team dynamics and the team culture. Because if I've never met the team, I can bring in any certifications, I can bring in any assessment tools, but if I don't understand that team and how to apply it, I'm kind of shooting in the dark. I'm kind of like throwing baseballs and I don't know where they're going because I'm not sure what that team really needs. I hope that makes sense.
Makes total sense to me. So what we're talking about is like visiting the restaurant, as you described it also in your article. I'm going to tag that also later on in this communication thread here, about visiting the restaurant, like setting up the goals, challenges, and needs, so that this is clear between the client and between the facilitator. The next step would be, of course, as in the restaurant, we are placing a complete order. What would be necessary in that step?
I would say the time, the date, the location, all the logistics, because on a certain point, the facilitator is really at the will of that client. Do they want it on Monday or do they want it on Friday? Do they want it in their office? Do they want it online? And we could, again, get into the platform specifics here, but ultimately, yeah, if you go to the restaurant, you say, hey, I've got a group of 50 people, they're going to come in here, I'm going to give you the advanced order. It needs to be a complete order, or you're not going to get one of the dishes that you wanted if you didn't tell the restaurant to give that to you.
So what would be platform specific? Because you already mentioned that a few times.
So this is a big one because we're talking about virtual facilitation. And so if you hire a virtual facilitator, and they have their own platform that they're used to, they can create, the URL to join. They can use the tools that they know work with their platform. Then it's going to be ultimately successful because the trainer is used to it. Just like a chef is in their own kitchen and they know which utensils and which cooking equipment they have, they know what works together. It's going to be a much more seamless process. But at the same time, in the corporate world, we know there are a lot of companies that don't allow the facilitator to use their own platform and their own programs. They need that facilitator to virtually come into their office, get on their platform, and that adds another level of complexity for a couple of reasons. First, some of the things that I use on my platform, even if that platform is the same with a corporate client, some of the permissions may not be the same. I've gotten in where they said, "Oh, we've disabled the chat function. Our employees aren't allowed to use the chat function." Now I'm scratching my head going, you're taking away communication from people in a communication program. Okay, but they have their own reasons that we can't argue with, especially if they're a financial group. So that's fine. But I have to know that going into it, because if some of my activities involve people putting a lot of things in the chat box, and the moment I start that workshop and the chat box is turned off, ideally I have a backup plan, but it's not going to be as seamless. And going back to the restaurant, that dish might taste a little different because the ingredients were different.
And I so much can relate to that. I remember we did a strategy workshop with a colleague of mine, and we were using WebEx meeting. It was her client. She made sure to test WebEx meeting before with them. She tested all the functions, and it seemed to be working. The day of it was very last minute that I got on board as a producer. The day of the strategy workshop, we connected well an hour beforehand. And we understood that the chat wasn't working exactly as you were saying. And they had it disabled, but not for all the ways that they were logging in. Interestingly, for some people logging in through way A, I can't remember what it was, it worked. For people logging in from way number B, it didn't work. And so all my chat messages were like, what do I do? I had to shorten all the links that I prepared, because there were several Google links that we were using for interaction for prepared for them, right? Hallelujah. That was like a stressful 1 hour beforehand, shorten all the links, restructure the Google Drive folder where I had all the material, giving it a timeline, like always putting instead of activity 1, I put there like 10:10 CET, so that they knew when it was the time that we're doing that activity. It was a crazy moment. And we have here a comment from Berta. So Berta is saying she loves the restaurant metaphor. She's also thinking about how inclusive a trainer should be. What about food allergies? So what if a client has problems with a specific platform, exactly what we were saying, material, and so on and so forth? What would you say in terms of food allergies, Rob?
Yes, I like that. I actually haven't thought about the food allergy aspect. I thought about being specific with your order and getting what you want, and I don't want this dressing, I want this other dressing. But the allergies metaphor is a great thing to add in there. Ideally, going back to planning, all of this will be discussed beforehand. The program goals, the goals for the team, what management wants to get out of it, that should be discussed. So the facilitator, when they start making that program, they already know that. They're already making all those activities and all the content with those food allergies in mind. And at the same time, with the platform, if we are having to use, if I'm a virtual facilitator, if I have to use my client's platform, I definitely want to log in there. I want to check what's working. I would love for them to be able to tell me right away, chat's going to be on, chat's going to be off, whatever. But until I get in there and experience it myself, I don't personally fully trust it, simply because of what you just said, Barbara. They can tell me this is what it will be happening the day of, and then something goes wrong. And it's not that an individual made a mistake, it's the tech. The tech is probably what's going to go wrong. I do a lot of live face-to-face presentation training, and I tell people, if something's going to go wrong in your presentation, it's probably going to be technology if you're using slides or a projector or something. And be ready to give your presentation without that. In the virtual world, we don't really have that luxury. If something is offline, if the meeting platform simply won't open, what is our backup plan? We usually have a backup plan, but it is going to take a lot of time to get everybody on the next backup platform.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, thinking about things that can go wrong, I'd throw this in there. There is some time, I say it's usually tech problems. Sometimes there are some people problems. And one of the things I know that was in my article is once you trust the facilitator or once you trust the chef, let them go cook. And then, you know, you've already, the menu's there, everything's set up, let them cook, let them do their thing. And if you think there's a problem, you know, you can speak to them, but don't try to be in the kitchen with them. Don't stand over their shoulder. And that's something that we've encountered with people who are new to virtual facilitation. And it's not their fault, but they just are so unaware of all the little things that go into a virtual workshop. They want to know more, but at the same time, their fingers are in the dough a little bit too much. And sometimes we have to say, look, what do you need me to know? What questions do you have? Once we're fine with that, you've got to go and look in the kitchen through the window. You can't be in here with the cooks.
I think it's fantastic because this let the chef cook, that metaphor is amazing. And also what you were putting it, and I'm just looking at the article again, it's like having a chef in your kitchen also. So let them cook and have them properly installed into your kitchen as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're going to have a virtual facilitator come to your company using your company's platform, you've got to show them everything. And if they say, hey, you know, I want to use this third-party app. One of them that we use is called Typeform. It's like a Google Docs, but it's kind of a superpowered Google Docs, or it's a superpowered SurveyMonkey, which is another website. So we use Typeform, and I need to test it and make sure that it does work, because if I have some of the activities that we do on Typeform, if it for whatever reason doesn't work uh, because they have a firewall that blocks Typeform, I would rather have that information before the live session. If it happens during the live session, it makes me scramble and I have to find another way to conduct that activity.
Absolutely. And also at this point, a recommendation. I also use Typeform for company surveys, but also sometimes for simple questionnaires that I'm using in a training context. And Rob, the last time, a friend of mine drew my attention to a company who set up a mini learning course through a Typeform. Was amazing. It was like really a micro learning, uploading videos, having questions, moving on, having a small text to read through, again, a question. It was impressive. I loved it. I've never seen that before through a Typeform.
That
And
sounds
no,
awesome.
yeah, it was
One of the
really
things
great.
One of the things we like doing in our live programs is using it for feedback. So if we use the virtual breakout rooms, which are great, you get 3, 4, 5 people in there, and they're giving each other feedback on whether it's a negotiation or whether it's a presentation. When the group members are giving feedback, if they enter it in that type form, if they put that person's email, we can set it up so Typeform sends that individual all of that feedback. So it's no longer, oh, in the next week, give them feedback. Be sure to give them a piece of paper. It's in that moment when they hit submit. As long as the email address is written correctly, it automatically goes to that person's email and they get all the feedback from their small group.
Oh, fantastic. That's also a great idea. Great idea.
And these
Cool.
are the things, you know, this conversation we're having, like this is ideally when we talked earlier, what should you do when you're talking with the virtual facilitator to find out if it's the right fit for your L&D department? These are the types of conversations ideally we would be having, because I can say, oh, this is what we do with our negotiation feedback. This is what the type form looks like. This is how they get the feedback. And hopefully the client says, hey, we really like that. It sounds like it works.
Absolutely. Super cool. And well, we discussed already like 5 steps how to select a virtual facilitator. Step number 6 is to update order changes quickly. But I would love to ask you about step number 7, follow up
Mhm.
and feedback. So what are like the important aspects here, like the restaurant review, as you call it, right?
Absolutely. It's something that some companies will forget, because when they have the workshop and the workshop is finished, they say, yes, we're done. But it really can go beyond that, because a lot of facilitators like us, we love follow up. whether it's something that we have online that the participants can do on their own or in small groups, or we love to talk with some of the team leaders, you know, whether it's that week or even a month later, to ask, how was the workshop received by the participants? Were there any surveys? If we didn't conduct an evaluation or survey, did they do one internally? But also from the team leaders perspective, what have they seen? Have they heard people using this in their conversations? If we do a sales training, have they noticed some of the sales trainings, whether the numbers improve or whether it was an issue with using different language in sales calls? Have they noticed some of their salespeople actually using that? And if not, we have to figure out why. And is there a follow-up needed? Do we need to come back in 2 or 3 months to do another short workshop just to refresh everybody, to help them really adapt what they learned in our session to their own personal work? Because sometimes those are the questions that we would love to get in the workshop, but we know until people are back on the job, it may not hit, it may not register for them that, oh, this concept, I like it, but I'm having a hard time applying it in my work, and they need just a little bit more follow-up. And of course, they could reach out to us, but at the same time, people are busy, people are shy. You never know if they feel embarrassed, oh, they didn't get it. We would love to be proactive and follow up with the management, with the participants. The other thing I would say about following up is, if you had a great experience, go to the LinkedIn recommendation, go to their website, write something, type something, or even just send them an email. Even just an email that says, hey, we really enjoyed this, or this was really beneficial. These are some of the results that we've seen. It does help. Just like going to a restaurant's website and writing a review is helpful for them too, if you've had a great experience. If you've had a negative experience, it's probably better to talk with them personally before writing on LinkedIn.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you anyways have the option always to revise the recommendation, but it's a good point. I think this is important because to have that also in the feedback loop at the end, because we do know that training and development, it's a very competitive area. Virtual training and development, it is also getting more competitive because in 2020 everybody went virtual, right? And so the recommendation part of after the review is really something that I'd also recommend you to do. And there's, for example, something that with most of my participants, I'm not even in email contact, because I noticed at least that last year organizations got much more careful with handing out email addresses, GDPR technically, blah, blah, blah. So I always encourage the participants also to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if I'm connected with them, it's much easier to follow up also on the recommendation part.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to networking, there's almost only benefits for professional networking. There's very few people that say, I don't want to use it. I don't want, even if they don't use LinkedIn a lot, they probably still have it. One person that stands, not one, I'm not going to name anybody, but a couple of years ago, I was doing a training. It was on personal branding. And I had somebody say, I have never had LinkedIn and I will never have LinkedIn. And I said, it's free. It doesn't take that much time to set it up. Even if you only log on, let's say once a month. We recommend more than that, but hey, once a month. They go, oh, no, you don't understand. I'm retiring next year and I don't care. That was the good excuse for not using LinkedIn.
Totally understand that. Well, Rob, time is flying, and I want to pick up Jordan's question because I think it's also a fantastic question to end with. Because Jordan is asking, what type of restaurant would you compare your company Knowmium to?
Man, this is a difficult question because I've thought a lot about training and ordering and finding restaurants and finding the right facilitator. I haven't thought about a style of food though. So here we go. I think I have an answer now. If you can find a restaurant that will go out, they will find the freshest ingredients and put together a menu that you have specifically requested. Maybe you didn't show the recipe to the chef, but you told the chef, kind of, here's what I want. They can bring you back something that you will like, or they'll make it again until you do like it. Some of the best bartenders in the world you don't have to order from the menu. You can tell them, I like Irish whiskey. I like chocolate, but I don't like really, really sweet drinks. What can you do? And they come back in 5 minutes with a drink that's probably better than anything else on their menu because they tailored it to your recommendations. So that's my answer.
I'm sure that answered your question. Thank you so much. And I think everybody of us or is getting hungry now or is getting sort of thirsty, right? I'm thinking about cocktails, but no cocktails for me. It's here rather dinner time. For you, it would be cocktail time, right? In Rob, for you.
For me, it's drink a glass of water and try to go to sleep soon.
Absolutely. So it's almost 3 o'clock in the morning. Rob, thank you so much for being with us here. To everybody out there, thanks for your comments, for your participation, for your questions as well. I will also type in later into the chat thread so that you will have the link to the direct 7 tips article that Rob published about the restaurant so that you can follow him and connect with Rob. Don't miss that out. With that, Rob, thank you so much for being with us. And you know, we have sort of a virtual tea, a virtual glass of water prepared for you in the backstage. I'm coming immediately to say goodbye to you finally, okay?
Thank you so much, Barbara. I look forward to seeing you many more times this year.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
So with that, we're at the end of our first LinkedIn Live of 2021. And I'm excited because if you go to the webpage, so go to virtualspacehero.com, and I'm just briefly going to share it with you. If you go to the webpage, you find really a lot of interesting guests for the whole year already there. And it is online. You can mark your calendars and you can see it. If you go here, virtual live shows and virtual events, you click on 2021, and if you scroll down, you already find the lineup until mid-March. So we started with Rob today about how to select a virtual facilitator. We're talking about COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning Virtual Exchange. We're talking about virtual learning tips. We have the best online event platform, breakout rooms with Cassie again. We have Shilpa also connecting from India. We're talking with Matthew Richter about learning misconceptions. Charles Louis Demare is about stories and fairy tales, gamification for strategy workshops, and many more coming up very, very soon on the webpage. So stay tuned. If you go to the webpage, you can also subscribe to my newsletter. And with that, I hope to see you next week, where we are going to talk about COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning Exchange. So enjoy your evening, your morning, or your afternoon, and see you next week. Bye.